Coming up, we dive in on draft night. Lottery odds coming down the pike. Will Brooklyn end up spiking in the right direction? Could Brooklyn end up spiking in the right direction? And why? On our first live in a long time, have we reversed our positions on our YouTube feed? We'll dive into it all coming up in just one moment. I can't even get there, boys.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends. It is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Whoops. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. And I got to tell you, I never feel much rust around doing the podcast, but certainly live. Yeah, that changes it a little bit. We're going to be obviously having the conversation as the draft lottery odds coverage kick off. We'll see where the Brooklyn Nets land. We'll talk about where the fan base should be couching themselves, Doug, as we wait for these ping pong balls, so to speak, to fall. But ultimately, the Nets, as we know, could be potentially, and the fan base could be potentially sitting here talking about the 7th or 8th overall pick in next month's draft.
Well, if you took a tour around Nets Twitter nation today, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about what's going to happen if they don't hit the number one pick, because it appears, if the internet, especially social media, can be believed, is that there's a lot of hope and a lot of things riding on the 9% chance that the Nets, exactly 9% chance that the Nets hit the number one overall pick, with some consolation around if they get the 9.2% chance of pick 2. And after that, it looks real grim, I think, from just a overall feelings and emotion standpoint. So I'm a little concerned what's going to happen here in terms of like where it ultimately lands. We can just go through to start where the odds are right now. You want to hit everyone with the odds of where we can think to stand, and where, I mean, it's very clear where they are right now.
We talk about where it could possibly land. We put this in order of what's most likely highest percentage, right? Picks 7 and 8, 29.7 and 20.6. Then we get into the dream within a dream. Picks 1 through 4, 9, 9.2, 9.4, and 9.6 respectively. Over 36% chance, though, that they can land in the top 4. And then easily the most dangerous and upsetting territory to talk about, pick 6 and picks 9, 8.6, and then 3.7%. Yes, there is a 0.2% chance they land in the 10th position, but I don't even really want to put that into the hearts and minds of the Brooklyn Nets fan base. So listen, we talked about this leading up to it. From a percentage standpoint, you can see the numbers. We can do the hard math. It's 50% chance that they're going to end up picking 7th or 8th. And interestingly enough, we were just talking with Barlow over on the NBA's coverage, our network coverage of this. And he was saying, asked the dividing lines of this draft, obviously a big gap between 1 and then 2 and 3. And then a gap, some people say, in his words, it's between 3 and 5. Other people say it's between 3 and, say, 7 or 8. And if you fall to that 7 or 8 spot, I think you're having a lot of different conversations, which includes some things that we've been hearing about, potentially what the Nets or any team that falls outside of that top 4 or 5 kind of range, what considerations they may make as you hear some other superstars around the league are eyeing a new destination.
Yeah, I mean, like they could definitely, I mean, I think there's a world where they don't get numbers 1 and 2. They think about trading this pick to the Bucks for Giannis. And I think there's going to be other teams that are going to think the same thing, possibly, like if they're in this range, and that if Giannis is on the table and the Bucks need a reset, and like they can just draft one of their own guys now and kind of hitch their wagon to that guy and be out of the Giannis stuff now, because he basically asked out. Like he said, whatever you say, I'm open to a trade. That's like code for I'm playing nice, but like let's get this thing to happen. And usually these kinds of draft stuff don't happen ahead of time. It's usually wait till afterwards, because you just kind of want to draft your guy and be done with it. But I do think the Giannis thing offers a slightly different set of circumstances that I could definitely see. Like if the Nets didn't get one of these top 2 picks, there's going to be a lot of talk about whether or not that's going to be enough to entice a Giannis trade. It's close. I don't know. I still don't think it's enough, but I could be wrong about that.
We also want to talk about what we think our predictions are for what's going to come of this potentially. But you mentioned, I mean, real quick shout out to Sammy there. Yeah, glad to see us. Of course you should be. And listen, if If Doug Norrie and Adam Armbrecht sacrificing their bodies on the altars of the NBA's lands Cooper flag in Brooklyn, that's what it costs. And every single fan should be happy to see us go if that's the net result. But last week we were talking about this. I don't think we got a chance to bring it to the podcast. We were discussing off pod about why the Brooklyn Nets are in an advantageous spot when it comes to trading for Giannis because of the money and some, you want to make sure you clarified your stance on it, maybe a little bit of a different take on this. And now knowing that the Giannis officially is going to be on the market.
Yeah, they can trade into cap space with him, and because they're going to be under the cap come especially during the draft, because they're not going to have re-signed Cam Thomas. They're not going to have re-signed. They're probably not going to be re-signed any of these guys. And so there's going to be a situation where they could trade him into cap space, which is where you don't need to match the money. And we kind of left that part out of different shows in the past. By the way, it's my thing. I know we're just doing this live. Is my thing too loud in the back here? I'm just going to ask you live in the air. I have the draft on live. Great. Yeah, so they're in a little bit of a different spot. And I still think that the Nets package for Giannis is worse than other teams because the Bucks really can't tank at all. And so they kind of need some players back here. And I just don't think the Nets have the players to send back. If you're looking at some of these other teams, if you're looking at, the Spurs and you're hey, you're going to send Stephon Castle and someone else back plus picks, right? It's well, all of a sudden you're getting a player and by the way, if you can send Stephon Castle plus wherever the Spurs land in the draft, which might not be too far behind where the Nets are, right? And it's all of a sudden those packages look so much better. And I think that's just where the Nets package probably would fall down, is around the actual players they would be able to send back in a trade. Because that's just the one thing they don't have. They really just don't have much in the way of young talent compared to where a lot of these other teams are. And so I think that's the one place where they would come up short behind teams like the Rockets team. And remember, the Rockets have the Suns picks. These other teams that might be in the Giannis sweepstakes have, let's say that you start putting in this year's picks. The Rockets have that Suns pick from this year, which could be just as good as the Nets pick too. So the Nets are going to be competing with these teams that might have a pick as close as some of these other teams with not as much to send back in the way of young talent as some of these other teams do too. So can take it. Maybe it's just if the Bucks just the money thing, it's they don't need to match the money. And that's hey, you just get all the money off the books and they save a ton. That could be worth a lot to the Bucks. But I think this draft's the lottery is going to absolutely tell a big story around this. And I think we're going to get this in the next couple of minutes. If we're faltering through this, it's because we're trying to watch the lottery while we do this. I think I'm on a little delay too.
So, and if we talk about the potential for, you just mentioned it there, some teams are going to be closer. The converse. So let's do two things. One, prediction. Let's do it real quick right now. Where do you think the Nets are going to end up picking?
I mean, I'll just go chalk and say 7th. Because that's the highest. I just can't in my brain ever go higher than what the odds are. So I can't. It's the least fun thing ever. But 29.7 chances, number 2, of number 7. I'll just go there. You can do the fun one.
Yep. I actually listen, man. Come on. I'm not going to sit here and say the Nets are going to get the first overall pick and get Cooper Flag. But being in the top 4, I think that's achievable. You combine those all together, it's a 36% chance. It's not as insane when you push together 7 and 8, 50%, right? So it's not unreasonable they still end up in these top 4. It obviously means spiking it a little bit, but if they do that, it's wish thinking here a little bit, because if they do, then it keeps everything open. The second thing I think we predict here is Brooklyn Nets don't get the first overall pick. What are we talking about with the idea of Giannis? If the Nets are 2, are you still are you putting that in there and saying, okay, trade for Giannis, we're going to go all in over Dylan Harper? If they're at 3, are you debating Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe, or are you again dropping that in the hat and saying, what else is it going to take to get this done to bring Giannis over? Because the fascinating part about this is if it goes that way, then instantly the Brooklyn Nets start having a whole different conversation about their next 3 first-round picks and what it's going to look like and what moves are they going to try to make to build out a team now around Giannis and presumably still Cam Johnson and a couple of other guys that they can bring back on reasonable contracts.
I mean, you have to do it. I think Giannis, he's just too good. I think you'd have to think about it. It's just those players don't come available very often, and you are unlikely to draft one of those guys in the 7th spot. So if it was good enough, I think you have to do it. So. Yeah. I think the NBA landscape, this lottery is going to start here probably in the next, 5-10 minutes. This NBA landscape is going to be totally changed by whatever happens here because some of these teams, one of these teams is going to get Cooper Flag, and their trajectory totally changes. Like they're going to be a landing spot probably for some of these other places. Like I don't think it would be too dissimilar to what happened with Wemby in the Spurs, right? It's like Wemby goes to the Spurs. Guess who wants to play with the Spurs now? A lot of guys, because you're like, well, I can tell myself a championship story with that guy, right? And it's like, I think Cooper Flag represents, at least maybe 2 years from now would represent that kind of guy for a lot of these teams. I think, right? Like it's a little different if it's Utah, probably a little different if it's Charlotte, because those destinations are like so unappealing. Probably New Orleans too, because they just never spend, and like they just screwed up multiple superstars that now. So I'm not sure if it would be like that, but so many teams, I think like Cooper Flag, it's just like it changes the organization for like 10 years. Right? Like it's a 10-year, you have like a 10-year window to like make stuff happen. Beyond that, like I think we're going to see a couple of these teams trade. I think we're going to see all over the map stuff when it comes to like where players are evaluated. I think that we'll see teams that will be really high in some guys. And I actually just think after 3, I think Ace will probably stick at 3. I think after 3, we're just going to be like super surprised by whatever the draft, like by whatever, however it shakes out with the draft. I just think it's just gonna be that draft. And you might see some of these teams trade for Giannis with this pick. I just think there's so many different things that can happen now that there's a reason like this is kind of appointment television for the NBA. Same way it was with Wemby 2 years ago. It was like absolute television. Like some team is about to just change forever. Like, or, for 10 years, you're going to change the trajectory of your team. And like, that's what's going to happen for one of these teams. 9% chance for the Nets to do it. Utah, Wiz, and Charlotte have 14% chance each, then 12.5 in North. God, I mean, he can't end these teams, right? Utah, like,
by the way, listen, like the NBA needs to be rigged. Yeah. In the old, like the NBA needs to be rigged sometimes. You want Utah to get the number 1 pick? I mean, Charlotte, Washington, even the Pelicans. Like I just, and it's not a knock on any of these cities or any of these teams, but you talked about this with other guys on the network. I know we always talk about, you're never going to be the major market battler to the New York Knicks, or maybe you could be if you put a guy like Cooper Flag in Brooklyn. Like I don't know. I know the Nets have had their superstars, so it's certainly a conversation, but you can't sit here and act like the Nets haven't had less than, maybe, let's say. And we talk about young players too. All these other teams already have young cornerstone kind of talents. The Nets don't have those guys yet on their roster moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, we're biased here because Adam jumped away. We're biased here because like overall, we just talk about the Nets and we want it to happen. And I think we're with all the fans that are out there. They're like, hey, we're like long suffering Nets fans. And it's been, the last few years have been terrible. And even when they had good players, it went like so far below expectation as to be like comically bad. And I think we're like, everyone in Nets Nation here has told themselves a story about like why the Nets deserve this player. I will say, if you go and read other fan takes on this, those other fan bases are going to make strong cases for why they, quote, deserve Cooper Flag, right? Like Washington's been dreadful for years. Utah, every one of these teams can make a case for like why they deserve it. Doesn't really have anything to do with it here. But overall, I don't think the Nets story is worse in any way or like more deserving in any other way than some of these other teams. Like all these teams that sit around the bottom of the lottery have like something that they could point to say, hey, like this is why it should kind of happen for us. I will say that the one team that doesn't really have that story to tell themselves is the Sixers, because I don't know, they just still have a bunch of good players in their team theoretically, and they just did one of the most egregious tanking jobs of all time because everything went wrong for them this year. So it's a little harder for me to tell that story, and I don't think Philly fans could, reasonably look at this and say, oh, we could deserve this guy. I mean, they got Ben Simmons, they got Joel Embiid, they started what was it called? The process, all this stuff, and I don't think that the Philly can make that case. But a lot of these other teams have just been sort of mired in mediocrity for a long time too. And if you're a team like Utah, if you're a team like Charlotte, like these are your kind of only chances to get a good player like this. Like superstars are not signing in Utah. Superstars are not signing in Charlotte. Like it just doesn't really matter. They could have all the money in the world and free up all this cap space. They're just like not going to do it. And so like for those teams, this does kind of represent, Adam's back. This does represent one of these only chances to like, for them to get one of those teams. And by the way, I think that is a reasonable case why those teams could like say, hey, we should deserve Cooper Flag or Dylan Harper. We're not going to be able to sign these guys. Like, you're just not going to the mountains of Utah if you're the best player in the world. Like, it's just not the world. They're announcing teams. They're not starting. I might be a little behind here announcing who's representing each of the team here at the draft. Am I a little behind? I think I'm on a little bit of a delay with my feed.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it up on my side as well. But to your point, the other part we think about with this is like where the Brooklyn Nets are capable of maybe being in the conversation for a superstar like Giannis if he wants to move out of Milwaukee. Some of these other teams, maybe it's not possible, right? Maybe you can't go get that guy because Giannis is going to say, no, I'm not going to Utah. Like, Utah is not coming to the table and saying, what does it take to get Giannis to Utah? We'll trade the second overall pick if we don't spike it. So some teams won't be able to have those conversations where the Brooklyn Nets, because of where they're located, will. So, I mean, there is value to that for sure. I just don't know if the Nets organizationally look at it as, let's go right back into it. So there's a part of that too, right? If we think about the Nets plan here, and plan is what first of all, we hope we spike one of the top 4 picks. Excellent. If we don't do that, is plan B immediately go for Giannis and then say, okay, we're actually going to open up another window like we did when we got Kyrie and got Kevin Durant, and we're going to go down that road for the next couple of years. That's fine. You can make that decision. I just don't know if that's the hierarchy that the Brooklyn Nets, Joe Signs, Sean Marks look at it as, or do they say, well, we still are going to have, right? Just because you don't get a top 4 pick, you're still going to probably end up at 7 or 8. You're going to get a really good player. Will he end up being generational? TBD, most likely not. Doesn't mean it won't be really good. Then you turn around and you have 3 more first-round picks. So there's still conversations to be had, even if you don't spike this year. I wonder what the hierarchy is for the Brooklyn Nets as an organization in terms of plan A, plan B, plan C. Is Giannis above or below continuing to build with a lot of young picks and thinking about this year and next year's draft class?
All right. I'm going to tune in here to their starting to stream here. I've got my thing in the background.
Lovely.
14th is the Spurs, so we're going to do a little bit of live stuff here. 14th is the Spurs, not too different than what we expected here. It's a little different, actually. I take it back. A little bit quiet in this going here. We got Spurs and then Hawks at 13.
Okay.
Bulls at 12. Nets couldn't show up in this area anyway, so not the end of the world here.
No, first time we'll talk about the Nets would be 10th.
Blazers at 11, so
Blazers at 11, that's probably, that's bad for them. They should have been odds on. They should have picked 10th, 63%, so they actually fell
Rockets at 10.
Rockets at 10. Good. Boo.
That actually is pretty good for the Nets. That falls a little bit.
Yep.
Raptors at 9 is good for the Nets, I think.
Raptors at 9.
Yeah.
That was a 12.9% chance. They had better odds to land 8th or even 7th for themselves.
Sixers lose their pick to the Thunder.
Love it.
Nets at 8. Brutal.
Nets at 8. Is it as it can only be? I will be right back to talk about that with Doug. You guys can commiserate for just.
Okay, so disappointment, Nets Nation. No other way to look at it. One of the worst possible results you could have. They had a 20.6 chance of. I'm just going to watch the rest of this thing and then try to react to this. Wizards get the 6. Pelicans at 7. Wizards get the 6. And then they're going to Sixers in the top. So brutal. Sorry. Let Jazz really fall. Jazz fall to 5. All right. I think they're going to take a break here. So 8th pick in the draft, Nets Nation has to be just incredibly disappointed. Top 4 is going to go to Hornets, Spurs, Sixers, or Mavericks. Yeah, I just don't know what to say. It's one of the worst decisions. It's one of the worst outcomes that could have possibly come here in terms of where they pick. They had a 20.6 chance to draft 8th. They landed on top. That was the second highest, theoretically second highest place they could be after 7th. So we really can't be surprised. But this has got to be, if you're a Nets fan, this is crushing, totally crushing. We talked about this all year that, people want to say it's a lottery, but It's a lottery based on where you place yourself within the lottery. Now, some of these teams already we saw are already outside of like the projected spot. But this, in terms of like 8th, you're going from a Cooper Flag style player to, I mean, Jeremiah Fears, like Con Knipple. I mean, if you're lucky, maybe he drops that far. Kasparis Giacosionis. Come on, Maliwatch. We'll see if he gets down that low. I don't really know. I mean, like, these are the players that the Nets are going to be targeting now. And in terms of like how you looked, like how things looked. I mean, this is.
I want to break in. Let me break in real quick. Breaking news. Nobody on the network is as concerned about hearing from me once the Nets ended up picking 8th. It turns out I fall a lot further down the board when the Dallas Mavericks, by the way, are eyeballing having one heck of a pick spike here for themselves. We were talking about, I mean, like, fan base is deserving it, not to derail you, but I know the conversation is like, now where are we now, right? 8th overall pick. It means a totally different thing. It means let's have that conversation about Giannis, because that's a far cry different, but now it also means there's teams with better picks ahead of you that maybe could be enticing in order to pull a trigger on something like that.
Look, let's just wallow in a little bit of misery here. It was, I mean, this is as bad of an outcome as the Nets fans could possibly hope for. I don't even want to say the word hope. It's actually funny. Someone just quoted, it's not luck. It says typical Nets luck. This isn't luck. This is where they landed. Like, this is this isn't bad luck.
The percentage said
this is the percentages. Like, there's actually no bad luck. There's no bad luck here. It's not bad luck. We said this all year long. When you're going to win games and you're going to win games for culture and you're going to do this stuff, like, you didn't tank to the best. They didn't tank to the best of their ability. Like, there were more losses to be had. I know no one wants to see this and hear this, but like, the losses do affect your ability to be able to pick higher. Like, the Pistons couldn't draft lower than 5. Or sorry, not just the Jazz couldn't draft lower than 5. Like, you still locked yourself in. You still locked yourself into a place where you could have just given yourself a better outcome. So people, if you're going to say it's bad luck, it's not bad luck related to where the Nets put themselves by the end of the year, which was they put themselves into the 6th best lottery odds, which gave them the highest chance to draft 7th or 8th. So when we were predicting like where they could draft, insane to not predict 7th or 8th, because that's where they had the highest. They have 50% chance to draft these places. It's gonna be.
Let's talk about some of these things here. There's a couple of good ones here because just to give everybody the heads up, at the bottom of the hour, 7:30, we're going to turn it over. We're going to kick off our traditional episode so we can frame everything about this. That'll be going up if you're not watching live on our feeds, all that good stuff. But for the next couple of minutes, there's a couple of things worth mentioning here. This one I think is a good one. We'll have this conversation. Not trade up possibility, but good to address it. Most likely not. Could the Nets package other picks in the first round and move up the board? Maybe. But the chances that they can move up the board to the place we were talking about earlier, to the place where the players, at least as prospects on paper, matter more, like Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe, let's say you're not even getting to the top 2, 3, or 4, the teams that are there are most likely going to want those guys, or those teams are going to be having conversations about, do we want to use this pick to trade for Giannis? So the Nets being able to get up there, even if teams are into it, it's just like we were talking about the Giannis package before, probably other teams that have the opportunity to make better offers in those instances. The other quick thing I'll mention too is while it's not about luck, it's about the results and the percentages. I will say, like Dallas Mavericks, there was luck for them, right? Like, so, it's not bad luck for the Brooklyn Nets because it matches the percentages. Some teams did turn out better for themselves in this lottery situation. It's just the Brooklyn Nets weren't one of them. That's really the way it goes.
Yeah, I just want to see how the rest of this plays out real quick. Well, I'm just so if we were just kind of in and out of this, we're going to do a formal podcast in 10 minutes here. And we'll keep it on the same feed, by the way, too, so no one needs to go anywhere. The Sixers getting number 1 would be just disgusting. I have to say it right now. I'm not even going to pull punches here.
And this is everyone's.
I'll tell you right now, Spurs. I'm going. Let's go Spurs. Let's go Spurs. We're rooting because let's just put Flag and Wemby together. Be done with it. They spiked all the generational luck in the world, and we'll be done with it.
That's right. Yeah, I like that.
All right,
I'll take that right now over the Philadelphia 76ers getting the number 1 overall pick, which would, by the way,
4th
confirm.
Pick. Hold on 1 second. 4th pick. Hornets get 4th.
Hornets, because nobody likes the Hornets. That makes sense. So rigged election in process.
Sixers go to third.
Good.
Wow, Harper flag going to the Spurs. Wow, Dylan Harper to the Spurs probably. Mavericks get Cooper flag. So sick.
Jesus God.
Dallas Mavericks 1.8% chance.
Now how do
1.
we?
1.
How do we?
Well, now, I'm going to tell you right now, all the It's a Lottery losers are going to come out with this and say
that's
this
not
is
my
going to
thing.
be the
No.
flag.
Of course they will. Yes. It's a bad day for people who point to facts and numbers and tell you what it's most likely going to be. But this, everyone was talking about it. The 76ers got the number 1 overall pick, then it's rigged, and NBA rigs it. I'll tell you one thing. There is something interesting about being the Dallas Mavericks, who made what everyone objected was like the most insane decision to trade Luka, and then they get the number 1 overall pick. I'll put on the tinfoil hat hard as hell. Be like, yeah, guess what? We're going to trade Luka. Why? A couple months from now, we're all going to be singing about how we got Cooper flag in Dallas, and we still have what? Still got Kyrie Irving there. We're still going to have, we're great, right back in it. Dallas Mavericks, playoff team, mid-tier, top 5, top 4 seed next season, automatically. There you go.
I'm like kind of shook here a little bit. Well, I'll tell you right now, here's one way you know that this stuff's not rigged. Because like there's no way after like a generationally bad trade to just spike your way back into a generational talent is like hilarious.
No. Doug, you got to put the hat fully on. Dallas gets the number 1 overall pick because they gave Luka generational talent to the LA Lakers, major market NBA team. End of LeBron's career, needs the guy there with him. Like that's why the rig makes sense here. You give LeBron Luka, and you get rewarded by getting Cooper flag in the draft. I got to tell you, we're leaving this podcast at the end of the month because I don't know if my conspiracy theories could be handled. I don't think the feed could take it.
If you're a Nets fan, it's a pretty brutal day. It's an even more brutal day to see a team with less than 2% chance go from the 11th overall all the way to the number 1 pick in the draft. Sixers somehow get the 3rd pick, which makes no sense after that disgusting tank. What's that?
I do like this. Do you like this?
I just tweet. This is so great. Adir, go to my Twitter. I actually wonder 725. I wonder if we did this at the same time. I freaking just tweeted this. I was over. I said Luka Doncic for Cooper flag. Incredible stuff. Nets fans are going to be disappointed. I'm actually just having a little trouble at a loss for words because I was still holding out hope that they would sort of like defy some of these odds and that they would land and kind of like Nets fans could be given some respite for what's gone wrong in the last couple of years. But, look, we'll spend the next couple of weeks while we're still on the pod here talking, what to think about this 8th pick. There are a lot of possibilities. I think there's still a possibility that you see this package in a trade for Giannis. I think that's completely on the table right now. I think the Nets can't look at this 8th pick and be excited really at all for where they are in a tanking situation with really not much in the way of young talent and lots of cap space. That's a pretty tough spot to be in for a team that probably wants to be relevant sooner or later. I mean, next year's draft is a very good one. And so it doesn't have Cooper flag, but there are guys at the top of their draft like Boozer, who are just really, really good. And Dibanasta, I always say his name wrong. AJ Dibanasta. So there are dudes at the top of that draft. What's that?
That sounds right to me. I think your pronunciation was
perfect. I know I always say the name. I always say the name wrong.
His own name.
But like those guys, there are going to be guys at the top of that draft, and so there's a case to be made for like another sort of like going in the tank here. But what everyone's going to say is I'll tell you right now, I'm never going to be able to wade into the Twitter arguments about the lottery now because the Dallas thing every pro tanker out there just gets dealt a terrible hand with Dallas getting all the way to the top because everyone's going to say it doesn't matter. And this is what everyone will hang all these people for all this time that said like it doesn't matter is just going to hang their hat on this thing, and there's been never anything you can say about it. So probably just going to need to retire from Twitter when it comes to like Nets drafting and tanking. I don't think I have any more to say. So what do you want to do? You want to roll into a regular episode, catch our breath here for a second, or?
Yeah, we're going to take ourselves one little beat here. We'll go ahead and not see us up on the screen for just a minute or two, and then we'll come back in, we'll reset the table, and we'll talk about what are the realistic scenarios and what will the Brooklyn Nets organizationally be talking about over the next month as they lead up towards the draft. Still a lot of options on the table, probably a lot of dejected Nets fans. So we'll come back in here in about 60 seconds and kick off our official Locked On Nets episode. Stick around. Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets actually landed in the less advantageous spot from a percentage standpoint in the lottery, picking 8th in next month's draft. What will be the plan for Brooklyn? Could they look to move this pick potentially, or will we be having a conversation about the Nets rebuilding for another 1, 2, or nay, 3 seasons yet to come? We dive in next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marbeck. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms and live on YouTube for our post-draft lottery odds coverage. The Brooklyn Nets, Doug, end up landing, as we were doing this live, also talking about it in real time, did not mention that even though the Nets ended up picking 8th, it was the less favorable of the odds. 29.7 to pick 7th. They end up landing 20.6% odds in that 8th position. And then we get into the conversation about what comes next for this franchise.
Yeah, look, can't feel anything but a deeply dark day for the Nets fans who kind of waited all year through a tanking year. That kind of was mostly a tanking year, though. By some standards, there was thoughts they could have tanked harder, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. They landed with the 6 overall odds. And then you watch the draft you watch the lottery, and you kind of hold out hope. If you're a Nets fan, it's like, well, you're still 9% chance to land number 1, still 36 and change percent chance. I really actually like 37% chance to land in the top 4. A lot of good talent in this draft. Obviously, highest odds would be to land at 7th, second highest at 8th. And when they flip that card over and it's them at 8th, and then you simultaneously watch Dallas with a 1.8% chance at number 1 go from, let's just call it the stupidest and worst trade in the history of sports. If we're just being nice about it, They go from that all the way to just drafting a generational talent in Cooper Flagg and just kind of get right back on the horse. So overall, if you're a Nets fan, you have to feel like pretty disappointed. And at the same time, I suppose it was kind of easy to see coming because of the odds, but then you want to look at the other teams. You're like, well, a lot of these other teams sort of flip-flopped around and it didn't really end up seeming to matter. And I'm sure I know what all the pushback for me is going to be on this one, because I will never, ever, ever hear the end of Dallas getting up to 1. I'm positive. I'm positive until the day I die.
And so I want to get into what we think what they think they can do at 7 or 8, right? We talked about all these prospects leading up to the lottery. So we've covered a lot of these players. There's a real conversation actually for someone that I think Doug probably in the 8th position would say this might be the play here for the upside guy if he puts it all together. We'll get to that in a second, though. I just want to mention Dallas spiked, so they jumped 10 positions up to number 1. San Antonio, they spiked 6 positions up to number 2. 76ers, they jumped 2 spots to number 3. And then it was Charlotte just falling 1. Utah falls 4 spots. Washington falls 4. The Pelicans fall 3. Brooklyn falls 2. Toronto 2. Phoenix 1. Let's go to Houston, Portugal. Portugal, excuse me, Spain got in the mix here. Portland falls 1 spot. And then 12, 13, 14 were chalk. So just, 3 teams moved up the board. Dallas, obviously a massive mover here. Have to feel great if you're San Antonio because now you're going to land most likely Dylan Harper to pair with Wemby. But that's how
or they just flip that right for Giannis right now. That's like that. Like if you're them and you just traded for, last week, I think you just traded for Dylan. You just traded for De'Aaron Fox at a point guard. Maybe you just go right away and you say that pick plus Castle and that's Giannis and that's the deal. That's like there's a world where that's pretty close. Like that's actually a great package for Giannis. And
I'm super disappointed that all off season and all season long I kept mentioning the Spurs as like trade partners for the Nets with Cam Johnson, trade partners with veteran guys. And then when I come to this, I go, so they'll take Dylan Harper. They, of course, now they'll be in that conversation potentially when we talk about San Antonio and the Spurs. Okay, fine. Let's focus on the Nets here, though. They're picking 8th. We did this all last week. And go watch these episodes. We'll reset the table, obviously, as well. But when we think about the players that are going to be available on the big board right now, I assume, I don't want to go on a limb here. Like we talk about Knipple. Maybe he falls a little bit. Trey Johnson's going to be right in the wheelhouse. Derek Queen. We talked about Yakinshunas as well. Jeremiah Fears, who you and I are both on the outside looking in on in terms of him being worth it. My assumption here would be that at the 8th pick, you might go ahead and say CMB is the kind of guy that if you're going to stay there and pick, maybe this is where you look at the rest of the board and unless somebody really falls to you, that this might be the swing you take at this spot where there's not a lot of blowback from the fan base, from any pundit in terms of what could have been floor ceiling on some of these other guys.
I do think this is going to be, it's funny about this 8th pick. I in some ways feel like this is something of a safe pick from an optics standpoint, because I do think there'll be a run on these guys that I think there's like there'll be a jostling of this like 4 to 7 to 8 range where there's a world where you could see a drop of tears, TIERS, happen around as we cry real tears.
I don't know why they got me, but thank you. It was good.
We're not really sure how people ordered VJ Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Con Knipple, Jeremiah Fears, Kim Amaliwatch, and maybe we want to throw Derek Queen in there, Jackie Chionis in there. Like, I think it might be a world where like they just take the best available guy of really the VJ, Trey, Con, Fears, and Kamen group, and it's like whoever's left of that. Because I kind of think there might be a tier after that. And like whoever's left after there, you just take that person and it feels pretty safe rather than having to reach. I don't know. I'm going on a limb. We'll probably end up talking more about this as we go on, but they probably
have Yakinshunas also very much in play here. I know we'll cover this going forward, but I think this falls right. We talked about him being very much a Sean Marks kind of guy, and now you're just kind of sitting there, right? In that next tier of players, very comfortable to take a player like that in this spot as well.
Yeah, it's I think it's just going to be a situation where we kind of like try to figure it out at that point, and it might feel kind of safe at that point. I'm not really sure. We've said many times, and we'll get into this in a second. We'll hit a break here in 1 second here, but we've said many times that this is a somewhat difficult draft to order. I think there's like a great group of players here, but it's a little hard to order this group. And I do wonder if 8 and 9 is where like kind of like you can kind of put the end of another group of guys. I don't know. I think this will be fascinating. We're going to talk with Rafael Barlow will be around. Yep. Like we're going to look at what he's got for his big board. We'll look at some of these other places, like obviously Gavoni and some of these other guys are going to have these things ordered slightly differently. I do think if you're thinking about the Giannis factor, I think that gets put out a little bit with where the Spurs pick is just because of like who the guy there is and what the Spurs could add. I kind of think that they have to be the favorite now to get him. I'm just saying that like off the cuff as we just sort of talk in the aftermath of a very, very disappointing result for the Nets. Like, I don't really, if you can hear me stumbling a little bit, it's because I'm just disappointed. Like I wanted them to draft high. I wanted them to grab one of these top 2 guys. Like, I think that it would have been a nice place to be really excited about. And this is just not where they are. Go ahead. We'll hit a break.
Yeah, we're going to get to the other some other angles of this, obviously. But Doug and I talked about it off pod. Like we said, nothing would be sweeter, not bittersweet. Nothing would have been more sweet to have our exit also be timed with the idea of like, and the Nets spike that pick and they get the franchise guy, and our exit comes with this jubilation for the fan base, and it'd just be a humorous and an awesome way to send it off. Instead, we don't have to have any regrets about leaving the podcast at the end of the month, as the Nets will pick 8th overall. We'll continue to break it down here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you my friends over at Hungry Root. Make myself feel better here. Everyone in this house always has something going on. It's the busy season, baby. You don't have a lot of time to go grocery shopping or cook healthy meals at home. Forget about it. That's why you got to use Hungry Root. Hungry Root's like having your own personal shopper and nutritionist wrapped into one. They take care of the grocery shopping and meal planning. They offer personalized recommendations based on the taste and our own health goals. Look, they're going to tailor those orders based on what you like or didn't love. It's just going to get smarter every single time. High quality, nutritious food. You can stick to your gut-friendly, high-protein diet. I'm not going to be spending hours planning. Take advantage of the exclusive deal. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Free plus for life. You like hearing that. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA for 40% off and a lifetime free item. And when you're done with that, head on over to our friends at Monarch Money. Look, you're checking that bank account. You're wondering, where'd all my money go? You're dining out, you're online shopping, entertainment. It's easy to lose track. It's easy for it to go quick, too. It's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO, gives you full visibility, control over your finances, not just a budgeting app. Monarch Money is a full, complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investment, spending in one place. You stop managing money, start building your wealth. You're going to realize maybe how much you're spending on food delivery, how much on some of those apps. You're going to budget smarter, and you're going to save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LockedOnNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Monarchmoney.com, code LockedOnNBA for half off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LockedOnNBA.
All right. As we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, live coverage on YouTube with the Brooklyn Nets not spiking into the top 4, not getting the number 1 overall pick, and actually falling in the lower of their 2% chances between 7th and 8th in the lottery odds. Someone in the comment section also threw up that the Brooklyn Nets, I think this is accurate. I don't know if it was a little bit even higher, but they had the 10th highest revenue in the league. But you're not going to, don't give them the guy. You know why? Honestly, you're too successful. You should have been even worse financially, and then maybe the NBA would have been inspired to give you a little bit of hope here. When we think about, you talk about this second tier edge, and I think the other thing you mentioned that's important to reiterate is like where these boards kind of shake out now, because when we talked about Colin Murray Boyles on some boards, well, he was closer to say 16 than he was to 10. On ESPN's new big board, most recently updated, he's 11th now, just outside of it, right? You talk about 7th and 8th, guess what? Molly Watch and Con Knippel are both there at 7 and 8, as is Yakinchunas at 9 and Derek Queen at 10. So that, when you mentioned about that tier, as of right now, I probably would say that 7 through, let's say 11, like we'll get into guys like Igor next week and some of the other European players that fall outside of and the edge of the lottery right now. But that 7 to 10 does seem to represent a tier of player that you can still get excited about. It's not those other guys, but the Nets have options here when it comes to that 8th pick.
There's good players here. I have no doubt about it. Like, there's very good NBA players. Like this, I'll put it this way: much better to pick 8th in this draft than last year's pick, like 8th pick. Right? All these guys would have gone top 3 probably in last year's draft. Almost definitely. Like I think they would have not topped out over Riza Shea probably, or Sarr maybe, but like pretty darn close. So I think all the guys that are going in the 8th, 9th range would have been top 4-ish kind of guys last year. So, I mean, rest easy with that, I suppose. Like, so I think the Nets are going, whoever they take here is definitely has a very good chance to be like a high quality NBA player. It's not like all world stuff like Cooper Flagg, who's 10 years and has like all NBA potential at the minimum as it goes, and Dylan Harper, who probably falls like in that next tier below. And then even guys like Ace, I think we could have told ourselves a really nice story. VJ Edgecombe could have told ourselves a really nice story about. It's definitely not that group for sure, but compared to last year, this is a better group than you're getting. This is a better group than you're getting last year. I got to look at last year's draft because I think it was like Jalen Wells and guys like this in this round. Let me just look real quick. NBA draft. But anyway,
you're right.
Like, go ahead.
No, you are right. Like, so the two ways, so you look at it one of two ways, right? After you get over the fact that the Nets don't get a little bit, don't get luck, not luck. They end up playing with the percentages and they end up eighth, right? Okay, fine. But if you take a look, if you look at it from the perspective of, okay, maybe they could have done more, could have tanked harder, could have had better percentages, fine. But they are still picking eighth in a very deep draft class. If you want, the silver lining is you're doing it in a year when there actually is a lot of talent. If this was a year ago, as Doug's going to pull up that draft class, guess what? If you had been in the top 10 and making that pick, while some of those players may have panned out through the prism of the moment and where the board looked, you'd be having a much different conversation. So I think you do have to keep couching yourself back into, this is a very deep draft class. You are going to get a quality player at 8. It is just difficult when you see generational talents like Cooper Flagg sitting up top there and you feel like your franchise didn't do enough to get you there.
And, the net, and by the way, so that range of the draft last year was Klingon, he wouldn't even be in this group for sure. Rob Dillingham would not be in this group for sure. Zach Edey for sure would not be. Cody Williams wouldn't have been in the group. And he was an absolute disaster this year at number 10. Like, he was probably the worst player in the NBA this year. So there's those guys, this is a better year to have that happen. Now, the problem is at 8th, the Nets are so far behind some of these other teams in terms of requisite talent that they just kind of needed to draft up here. Because if you look at all these other teams that end up going, if you look at sort of where, okay, all the teams above them, already the Nets were so devoid of talent comparatively to the rest of the NBA. But then you look at these teams above them, like Dallas. I mean, yeah, they traded Luka. They still have Kyrie and Anthony Davis, PJ Washington, and now they're going to add Cooper Flagg. That's a damn good team. That's a really good team. Yep. San Antonio is going to, at worst, pick Dylan Harper, and at best, maybe trade Dylan Harper and someone else for someone like Giannis. And now it's the Giannis, Wemby, De'Aaron Fox show. And good luck figuring out what you're going to do with a team like that. Philly, disgusting. But they still have, it's going to be Embiid plus Paul George plus Tyrese Maxey plus Ace Bailey or something like that. And even Charlotte's LaMelo, and it gets a little worse for them because that team's kind of worse. But even LaMelo would be by far the best net, even though it would be impossible for me to watch him. And then they're going to add number 4. Utah has tons of talent, even though they're not very good. And we'll see if they put it all together. But Markkanen, they got Collins, they got Sexton, they got Keontae George, right? They have some other guys here, and they had some younger guys that didn't look bad. Then you get Washington, and that one's maybe comparatively worse, comparative with talent. But even them, Bilal Coulibaly looks good, and maybe Washington's on the same level. Then you get New Orleans. They still have guys, and Zion for at least for now. And then you get Brooklyn. So the point is that almost all those other teams just have a baseline of talent considerably higher for the Nets. In a lot of ways, the Nets just kind of needed to go higher just to start catching up on the talent. Not even getting there and surpassing any of these teams, just trying to catch up on the talent. And that's just going to be a hard thing to do, with just the draft. They're not going to be able to sign talent into the room. And now you run the risk, because here's what's also going to happen. Let's say Giannis isn't on the table for the Nets, and I really don't actually think he's going to be now. But they're going to either do one of two things. They're going to take in some bad money and try to get some draft compensation with it, similar to what they did in the past in the old Timothy Mozgov days. Or they're going to go total flyer on talent, like a Jonathan Kuminga or something, and hope to get lucky on post-hype guys and try to overpay for them. And I just think that's just a hard place for them to be. They're just in a very tough spot now. This pick puts them in a very, very tough spot to in a rebuild, in the rebuilding fashion, because the talent is not going to be earth-shattering, and there's just no other ways to get this talent. They're going to have to crush the back of the draft, which I think they have the ability to do, by the way. And we can talk about that later, because we kind of ignored the back of the draft where they have a lot of picks. And this is a very deep draft, but the 8th pick just puts them in a tough spot.
One of the things that we talked about leading up to this lottery and we were leading up to this draft, and then was how long is the rebuild timeline? The other part of this is, you mentioned 4 picks overall in this round. We'll talk about it coming up here in a second. What can this look like? Already, Tankathon has their first board up in terms of predictions for who goes where. We'll take a look at that and whether or not we can say, hey, listen, you're going to see some players walk out the door in free agency, young talent that maybe is going to get contracts elsewhere, and a whole new crop of guys are going to come in to get evaluated. And then already you start looking ahead to next year's draft class. I hate to say it, but that's exactly what this season is going to be again for Brooklyn, thinking about next year, thinking about where you land and whether or not you'll have another chance and maybe to miss out on another generational talent. We'll do have to close things out here in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. NBA playoffs full swing. Every night's delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, can't miss moments, game-changing game-winning shot or breakout player. I got there. But never been a better time to get in on the action. The playoffs have been totally sick. FanDuel's been there the whole entire way. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. Got player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Maybe you're just showing up for those biggest moments. Maybe you're doing a little live in-game betting. There's been major swings down here, some of these late game stuff too. So if you're getting into live betting too, like these things have been just the grass, been all over the place. FanDuel gives you every piece of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right. As we tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, live on YouTube, breaking down the lottery where the Brooklyn Nets will pick 8th in next month's draft. What does it mean for the upcoming month, right? We said maybe if they spiked a little bit higher, there could be a conversation about trading for Giannis. I think, as we've already highlighted, probably some other teams will be involved, but we'll hear more about it, right? Already fans in the chat are saying, well, maybe if Giannis says he wants to go to Brooklyn, great. I want a lot of things in life. More often than not, I end up with something a little bit different, and I adjust my perspective accordingly. But already, let's walk through this idea, because already Tankathon threw up, hey, this is what it's going to look right. I don't want to shock anybody, but Cooper Flagg, he goes to the Mavs, and you work your way down. Nothing particularly surprising, just in terms of what they're predicting, at least early on. But Molly Watch ends up going 8th. They have him going 8th to the Brooklyn Nets. And as you work your way through the back end of the draft, Carter Bryant at 19, they're going to go with Walter Clayton Jr. 27, 26, Lendenborg out of UAB. So, okay, you're building this out. I think what I do find interesting about it, and we've talked about who would we go with, right? And you and I tend to fall in the line of you can't teach size, but you can try to evolve other parts of the game. If they go with Molly Watch, I do think the fascinating thing, and in true Nets fashion, Nicholas Claxton had to have a down year and have a lot of money on his contract going into an offseason like this. But I think we'll start to have those type of conversations. If they go with a big early in this draft, you start to think about who's not going to be here already. Daron Sharp is a free agent. Are they bringing him back or not? Maybe trade candidates in that regard. Likewise, if it ends up being a point guard, ends up going backcourt player, okay. Does it matter relative to D'Lo? I know that these guys coming or going in this offseason or going to next year, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it matters to what you touched on in that last segment, getting more draft capital for future drafts so you can continue to have more options on the table. I tend to think we're going to be having a lot of that conversation leading up to the draft, as opposed to conversations around someone like Giannis. You mentioned Kuminga. I think that could very much be a possibility. But again, price point's going to matter when it comes to him as well.
I can't even think straight. What'd you even say? I'm not listening. What'd you say? I'm listening. But look, I'm bummed. It's not that.
By the way, it really is. Okay. Little peek behind the curtain here, because as somebody who, when we started this podcast, Doug was deeply invested in projections, nightly projections for the NBA. I was the idiot who's been a fan of the Brooklyn Nets and the New Jersey Nets. Like, I was just a fan. Doug's first question when he considered starting a podcast was, I was trying to figure out why you're always talking to me about the Nets when we were getting together and we're talking about NBA and all the best players. I was like, yeah, the Brooklyn Nets, man, they're kind of sneaky here. They might be able to pluck their way into the back end of the playoffs. It's because as a fan, you get super optimistic, even no matter what, you get optimistic. It's going to spike. It's going to work out. You land superstars. They don't even sniff the finals. You lose superstars. You get all your picks back. You don't even do that the right way, right? Nothing works out over these last handful of years. So there is just a big moment of dejection here around something that clearly is not going to have that same opportunity or the same optimism for the fan base going into the draft and going into next season. And then it's going to happen all over again next year. And this day today is going to be vehemently referenced by the entire fan base when it comes back to Nets have a 9% chance to get into the top 4. Like, maybe they do, maybe they don't. Most likely they'll end up picking 10.
I told you, it's a bad day for pro math, pro tankers. Like, it's like you can't ever make the case again. Like, you'll just never be able to do it. So, in some ways, it's like, this sounds so stupid, but this is part of the reason we announced that we were like kind of end of the month with the show, because we were like, we wanted there to be no confusion about like whatever happened here had nothing to do with what No, like it had nothing to do with the outcome. It was like
coming out of retirement 1 year from today.
We foresaw this. We were like, well, we have to say it now because you're not supposed to announce it like a month ahead of time because it's like gets a little weird. But about like motivations and stuff. I mean, we're still all the way committed to doing it, but like it gets weird around motivations. We're like, well, if they get the 8th pick, everyone's gonna think we left because they didn't get Cooper Flagg. We're like, we can't. Our channel coordinator laughed at us for even saying it. We're like, we're right. We know what we're talking about here. We have to say it now.
Say this out loud, well ahead of this, in order
to have validation. Of course, we have to deal with the ejection now because like if you deal with the ejection late, you're always backpedaling. You never make the sale. So like in this case. Anyway, this was like sort of the worst case scenario. Now that being said, we're still Nets fans. Like I'm just bummed. Like I went into this, even though I'm as pro like statistics and percentages and everything as much as anybody, there was part of me that was like, come on, one time dealer. Let's go. Like, let's go. Let's flip the card over. Show me the ace. like we just need to see it one time. And we know that this stuff can happen. Like you play enough, you do enough gambling. You play enough poker, like whatever it is.
You know how we know? Because we just watched it happen tonight with the Dallas Mavericks.
You should not bank on it over the long term. Over the long term, hoping for that stuff, you will lose. Like you will lose. You play games of chance like this, and you do not factor in the odds. In the aggregate, you will get absolutely curb stomped. Like you'll go bust in no time at all. Now, at the same time, sometimes you get it in with kings and against aces, and you just get out alive. It can happen. And so that's the part where you kind of sit here and think to yourself, well, like I just wish for us and Nets fans and everybody else that it just worked out a different way because it's been a weird couple of years here. I mean, the Nets have had one playoff win in 10 years, like one playoff series win in 10 years. They've had 3 winning seasons in the last 11. Like this has been a rough stretch. They had high expectations around the big 3. And we all know that went as bad as possible. Basically, right? Like this has been a really, really rough run for Nets fans for like a long time. Like there's really not been tons to hang on. There was they had the one series against the Celtics, and it was all bad except for that, basically. And some of it was like the worst kind of stuff because it was like basketball stuff and off the court stuff. So you're dealing with all this stuff, and then you get a tanking season and whatever. So like this has been a really bad run for Nets fans. There's no other way to put it. Like it's been 20. It's not been 20. It's been 11 years of either low expectations, low results, one little season of low expectations, decent results, where they just kind of like are exciting a little bit. That's the D'Lo year. Then it's the high expectations, bad results comparatively. And then it's high expectations and the worst results. and that's kind of like, that's the story of the Nets for like the last decade plus. So then you get in here, it's like, wouldn't mind just, turn River 2-outer here and we get Cooper Flagg and you just don't get it. So anyway, I'm just kind of waxing on disappointment.
You better believe it. Best way to get yourself a shout out on the show too is obviously come in with something like, I'm glad the fans have you guys during this time. So it could be worse. Thanks for the commitment. You will be missed. Yeah, listen, man, while I appreciate the endorsement, I'm not going to lie to you. There's plenty of fans that would have been happy to have never heard my or Doug's name if it meant the Brooklyn Nets had gotten this pick. But you're right, man. We'll see how it plays out. There was one other good one here. Obviously, we've been live on YouTube with this back in all week long, talking about different scenarios. I think that this is one thing. If you want to talk about, why still be optimistic, D-Row came in with what they should do is just acquire the best possible players you can and let Jordi Fernandez coach them up and let's go. Listen, I said it over on X. Nobody appreciated it. I'll say it here. You got the 8th pick. That's it. Turn the page. Now it's what are you going to do with it, right? There's can't do anything else. Can't go to the NBA and start knocking down Adam Silver's door saying we want to redo, do over. Now, this is where you're at. So you try to find a way to maybe get some young players in, and maybe the sweetest moment that a lot of fans hold on to is that first D'Lo year with Spencer Dinwiddie, right? And that young scrappy team that outshot its coverage. Yeah, live in those vibes a little bit. And we'll see how the draft ends up going next month. We got a long way to go before we get to there.
Yeah, look, we'll spend the next couple of weeks. We'll talk about the 8th, and we'll still talk about some of these.
We got other prospects. Now we get into the back end of the draft.
Yeah, we'll do the back. We're locked into that. We'll do the back end of the draft for sure. And we'll do a couple more days debating on like who the Nets should kind of take on an 8th, and then we'll take a break from that. We'll go into the back end of the draft where again they have 19, 26, and 27. in a very deep draft. Like there's going to be guys to get excited about at the back end of this draft. So we'll try to do like three guys a day that could like kind of fall into these ranges. And I think the Nets fans are, going to go into that. I'll tell you what's going to be fun. The summer league next year will be fun. They'll have a good summer league team for sure. I know nobody cares, but like they'll have a fun summer league team. And there's a world where like talent wise, they raise the floor here. I mean, couldn't go much lower, but they raised the floor on like just the overall young talent because they just have a few picks in this draft. And did it work out this time for the Nets? No, but there's always 2026. And just tank for that one. Maybe they'll get a 1.8% chance next year.
Wait, there's also 2027. Hold on, let me finish. There's also 2028. Wait,
not for the Nets. I don't think the Nets have their 20. Let's just hold on 1 second. I don't think they have a 2027 pick. Isn't that still with the Rockets? Let me just check that out real quick.
Yeah, they got one. I think they might have a gap year maybe in there somewhere.
This is a good podcast. That's
no, I think it's a good way to finish off with this. But by the way, while Doug does pull that up, I will just say we appreciate everybody that came in for it. There wasn't a lot of reason to do live post games this past season for obvious reasons. But when we did these the year prior, everyone that came in, same thing we're seeing here. People chopping it up in the chat, throwing in the different ideas, things that they might want to have the conversation with, and obviously trying to figure out how we hold enthusiasm around a franchise that through their own efforts or outside forces have not been able to get across the line on satisfying this fan base.
I was right. They don't have the 27 pick. They didn't get that one back from Houston. So they have the Knicks pick that year, and they have a Philly pick protected 1 through 8. So get excited for those. Get excited for Philly to be bad but not terrible, and the Knicks to be all the way terrible. So that's what we're kind of rooting for. All right. Appreciate everyone here that jumped into YouTube Live. Obviously, a disappointing outcome for the Nets, but make sure you subscribe to Lock the Nets. We're still going to break down the rest of this draft. We'll still look at who's going to be going 8th. We'll still lament how the Nets have terrible luck as a franchise because I think that doesn't seem to be that hot of a take at this point, but that's just the case. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all free for you. Really helps the show. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen.
We listen to views that make us feel good instead of ideas that make us think hard. And that is Adam M. Grant.
One of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. The 8th pick. Basketball.